Cool. So let's begin. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this session specifically scheduled for HR, Operations, General Management, and IT students. So the agenda of the session is today we'll be talking about the different processes that you guys will be encountering as and when you join your business schools. So today we'll talk about how do you crack the best summer placements at your campus. For this purpose, we have panelists across HR, IT, operations domains, and people working in different roles in different companies. I'll quickly introduce the panel to you, after which we'll take the agenda of the session forward. Before that, whatever questions you would have, just put it on the chat box, put it on the live chat, and we'll be happy to take your questions towards the end of the session. At the same time, if you look, there's a link on the pin chat. That link is about the mentorship program that we have started. This mentorship program is basically meant for students who are joining this year. We help them with their GDPA preparation for their summers, as well as for their CV content vetting, as in the resume enhancement. Then we have case study workshops as well. So just check out the brochure, and if you're interested, please enroll for it, and then our team will reach out to you. Okay, having said that, I'll quickly introduce the panel that we have today. First up, we have Nancy. So Nancy completed her MBA from MDI Gurgaon. She's interned with Whirlpool, and currently she's working as an HR business partner at General Motors. Second up, we have Arpit. So Arpit completed his MBA from NITIE in IT and supply chain. He interned with GE and then back to PPO, and currently is working in GE in their DTLP program. Then we have Amlan. Amlan completed his MBA in HRM, Human Resources Management from XLRI Jamshedpur. He interned with TAS, one of the dream companies for general management students. And so he interned with TAS and back to PPO, and currently is working there as a probationary officer. And similarly, we have Abhinaba. Abhinaba also completed his MBA in HR from XLRI Jamshedpur. He interned with Procter & Gamble and currently is working with them after bagging a PPO. And we'll also have one more panelist joining in. He is from SP Gen. His name is Sudarshan. He did his MBA from SP Gen in operations and currently is working with Amazon, and he interned with L'Oreal. So that's about the panel. I'll quickly leave it to individually the panelists to introduce themselves in detail and also give us a little background about, firstly, how did you land up into an MBA setup? Was it like pre-planned, or was it, just out of nowhere? And at the same time, I would want you to give a little bit brief about what your profile was when you joined your MBA, as in your whether you were an engineer or how much work experience did you have. So I'll probably leave it to you guys itself. So I'll start with Nancy, and then we can move forward. So Nancy, all over to you.
Sure, thank you, Harsh. So hello, everyone. So my background is primarily, I was working with Infosys prior to my MBA. I have experience of around 3 years with them as a systems engineer. So, basically my profile was more into software development and maintenance over there. During my tenure with Infosys, when you come across various management related, functions, and that's where I kind of developed my interest toward management, and I started preparing for my CAT. And through my CAT, I landed up in MDI Gurgaon. I opted for HR over there, and it has been immensely great journey. I would say, once after working, when you again go back to your education, it's an honor to be back to college campus and full-time MBA. It was a great experience, and with that, of course, we will be talking about our summer placements, final placements, etc. How it goes during this particular session going forward. But yeah, I in General Motors, I got placed through campus placement, and I have been with the organization since 5 years now. I joined as a management trainee and worked on a couple of projects, and then moved to HR business partnering role over here. And yeah, since then, my journey has been going smooth here.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction. I'll move on to Arpit. So Arpit, all over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Harsh. First of all, I hope that every one of you are safe at your home and taking care of your family. So hi guys, I am Arpit, and I did my MBA from NITIE Mumbai. And prior to that, I completed my engineering in computer science and engineering from IIIT Jabalpur. And I'm a fresher, so I joined NITIE just after my college. And so like currently I'm working with General Electric. So I did my internship with GE only, and then I'm part of their leadership program called DTLP. So it's like Digital Technology Leadership Program. And if I talk about my experience at NITIE, I think it was like I should say them the best 2 years of my life in terms of learning, in terms of fun, and in terms of meeting people, like especially from all over the country. And like I was a fresher, so like most of the batchmates were work experience with a good work experience, and getting their views about the different things, and it was a like awesome experience for me. And to answer her question, like what was my plan? Like, is it a planned or was it not planned? So I think it was a mix of both. So I was hoping that if I crack a good placement, I will go after 2 years, and if I crack a normal placement, I would go immediately. But like I should say, the decision after getting a good placement also, and then getting into MBA also, I think it proved really right for me. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Arpit. Thank you so much. Sudarshan has joined in. I'll quickly introduce to you Sudarshan to you as well. So Sudarshan completed his MBA in operations from SP Gen. He interned with L'Oreal, then worked there for a couple of years, and now he's working with Amazon as a program manager. So yeah, welcome, Sudarshan. We're just doing the introduction rounds, so I'll come back to you towards the very end. Yeah, so I'll move on to Amlan. So Amlan, a little bit of an introduction and a background about yourself.
Sure. I mean, you have covered pretty much what I have been doing professionally since I've completed my MBA. Before that, I started my professional career in 2015, whereby I worked in Maruti Suzuki in the R&D division for around 3 years. So I had 3 years of experience even before I joined the B school. And yeah, after that I joined XLRI, and as everyone here has said and has experienced, B school is a life-changing journey in itself, and you get to learn a lot. You get to experience new things. One aspect I think which is not talked about a lot is the kind of ecosystem and the kind of support and mentorship you get in B school. I can very confidently say that a lot of the learning that I got and a lot of the support and mentorship that I got from my seniors have been instrumental in shaping me or my performance throughout the interviews and placements. Speaking of the decision to do an MBA and how did I end up there? So, I mean, I did not always want to do an MBA. When I joined the sector, I was a little confused. But after being in the automobile industry, being in a particular sector for 2 to 3 years, I thought that maybe my learning process was flatlining, and there's many things that I could learn. That is when I started my MBA preparations. And yeah, so HR had an appeal for me from the very beginning, at least when I was in my particular when I was in my organization. I got to interface with the HR quite frequently, and that's where the interest sparked. And yeah, that is how I eventually went into XLRI, and yeah, here I am.
Yeah, thank you so much, Amlan. I'll come back to you, and first I want Abhinaba to complete, and then I'll ask you whether HR was a default decision, or was it like you did not have any other option, considering XLRI. HR is probably one of the best in the country. That's the reason why you chose HR. So I'll come back to that question. I'll let Abhinaba to introduce himself first. Yeah, Abhinaba.
Hi guys, my name is Abhinaba Chakraborty, and I hope you all are doing safe and well in these tough times. It will soon pass, don't worry. Regarding me, I am a fresher. When I joined MBA, I was doing my chemical engineering degree from BIT Mesra. And I had a lot of influence from different people in my life whom I had seen in these positions before, the ones which I aspired to become. So it was a very clear thought process for me. I prepared mostly in the last year of my college, and luckily I got through. I am from Jamshedpur, a bit of context, so XLRI had been my dream college. And there are certain people who are alumni of that institution who are my relatives as well. So it was a bit of that too. So culminating all of these, also my luck, I performed well and got into XLRI. I was, working at my startup, which we were doing simultaneously with our college. And so that took a bit of a backseat, and I pursued a full-time HRM MBA. And as soon as I got in, I, interned with the company which I most liked. It was a dream company for me, and like after that I converted those series of interviews and everything in the process, and I got where I am. And right now I'm currently working as an HR business account manager in the Goa plant of PNG. Yeah, that's about me.
Okay. Thank you, Abhinaba. And now just answering the question which I asked. So same question goes to Nancy as well. Like, was HR like a default choice? Because, you guys did not have a background in HR. So when someone with an experience like, Amlan, you said you had 3 years of experience before you went for your MBA. So why did you choose HR? Probably operations would have been more suited to you, considering, your background. Then why HR? Similar questions to Abhinaba. Abhinaba, obviously, he said XLRI was his dream college, but why not BM and why HR? And same questions to Nancy as well.
Yeah, Nancy, you want to go first?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, how things were with me, when I started my job with Infosys, right? So that was like, I actually wanted to be a software engineer. I was, good with coding and all those things so that's how I wanted to be there. But yes, during my tenure with Infi, I did not get a lot of exposure with HR. I understand, things were so much digitalized over there that exposure wasn't there. But on the other hand, while I was preparing for my CAT, there was time for me to set my thought process into, which side of management I really want to go for. And there were two things in my mind clearly. One was the operations, the other one was human resources, because I believe equally both the functions, rather, any function that you choose or any stream you choose, it's equally important when it comes to adding value to the organization. So I did my own set of research and understood that, as per my competencies or my strengths, what will be the most suited area to opt for. So that's where two things that I decided, either operations or HR, whatever I get into. But the other criteria was I need to go into, premier institute. I did not wanted to, go away with that particular brand. So when I got this result, right? So MDI over there, I got this admission in HR. That's where I ended up in HR and not operations. And I am not regretting it at all at this point in time, because it is really very, you get to know so many things while you are in HR, the back-end stuff, which is happening, at a management level. And while you are making certain decisions, how it impacts the employee, how it impacts the organization. From that ways, I think it's a real value addition. And I'm really proud to choose that particular thing, at that point in time. Yeah.
Okay. And one follow-up question to you would be, so apart from MDI, did you have any other choice with respect to colleges?
Yes, I did have a choice with respect to Symbiosis, right? But then it was not SIBM. So that's where I thought that, it's better to have MDI. MDI is a good brand to have.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. Moving on to Amlan. So yeah, Amlan, similar questions to you.
Yes. So first of all, this question reminds me of every single interview that I have given. This question has been a repeat offender, starting from the selection interviews at XLRI to the selection interviews at TAS. Right? So I'm pretty used to this question at this point. Having said that, not a lot of people do have an exposure, especially in HR, before they do their MBA, right? Some people do have an exposure in finance, people do have some exposure in marketing, and people do have exposure in operations as well. But HR is a specialization where people do not really have a direct exposure, right? As far as I am concerned, I was not in the production division of Norway. I was more in R&D. And one of the other auxiliary roles that I had to play apart from my core roles was also to help the training and placement, training and people development department to create their training content, because they also need subject matter experts, because they can help in delivery and communication, but structuring and content is something they need, the help of people who are actually in the field. So that is where I engaged with them, and I was pretty fascinated by how they are the face of the organization and they are responsible for such, upskilling. I mean, they function in the background. You do not notice their presence, but at the same time, a single mistake on their part could have very huge repercussions on the ground level, right? At the same time, once I started working in Maruti, there are a lot of things that I started discovering about myself as an individual, as a professional. What are my strengths and weaknesses? What is my style of working, right? So I like when there is a lot of room to experiment, where I have room to take initiatives, and where I can see the impact of my initiatives on the ground. When it comes to operations or sales, not saying that you do not have room to take initiatives or see its impact on the ground, but the line of sight is just too long, right? So you might come up with something and the impact might be, it might be a very lag indicator. So in that way, HR kind of fascinated me. Now looking back, my reasons for joining HR, it came from a place of innocence and naivety. But now that I understand the function a lot more, HR has a lot more to offer in terms of learning. But yeah, I would say, in short, my primary motivation was that I liked working in that particular work, or liked doing that particular piece of work apart from my role. And I thought that I had a lot to contribute, and this particular field, could see significant disruption. And that is the reason why I chose HR. And yes, as you rightly said, operations was also something that I had in the back of my mind. Apart from XLRI, I had conversions of XIMB. I had conversion from SP Gen Ops, and if I recall, I think I had conversion from SIDM also. But ek to XLRI has a brand factor, and since HR had a reputation in XLRI, so that's why I decided to go for HR.
Okay, thank you so much, Amlan. Yeah, Abhinaba, same questions to you.
Yeah, so it's a very simple answer from my end. First of all, it was my best call. Secondly, the people I wanted to become, like I had seen and taken guidance from, they were all very good position holders in the HR department. So I liked that life, I liked the career they were leading, and I liked the kind of work they were doing. So it was a no-brainer for me when I got that call. And as you rightly, as I mentioned before, Excel was my dream college. So those are the three reasons.
Okay, thank you so much, Abhinaba. I'll move on to Sudarshan. So Sudarshan, a little bit of a background about yourself, as in your, what you did before joining SP, and then after that, how life has been at L'Oreal, because you were not in proper operations role, you were into a sales role, and then now you have moved on to a program manager role at Amazon. So I want to know how that transition for you worked, and then why MBA, obviously it becomes a imperative question. So yeah, take us through your journey.
Yeah, so I think I'm probably an example of what doors MBA can open for you. The possibilities are endless. My mind story is probably an example for that. To start with, I'm a mechanical engineer from BITS Pilani Hyderabad campus, post which I worked with Mercedes-Benz R&D in Bangalore. It was a core job, so I happily took it, although people around me were going for masters, going for MBAs. Obviously, those were also very lucrative options, but the amount of core jobs mechanical people were getting at that time was very little. Probably it's the same story right now. So I wanted to explore that opportunity. It was a good 2 years with Mercedes-Benz, great exposure into state-of-the-art R&D and all of that. But then after a point, you realize, yes, like most of us do, apart from computer science, all other engineering branches, I'll be very frank here, that the growth curve starts to slow down unless you do a master's or look for opportunities overseas. That's when I think I tried my hand at MBA. I was not really into preparing a lot for CAT. It is a lot of effort. So firstly, big hats off to people who, actually crack those 99 numbers and got into MBA. So for me, it was more of a, let me get into an ISB or a Shillong or an SP, the things where probably you don't need to slog so much. I did get an ISB call, but did not convert the interview. That was my first MBA interview. We could talk about that in detail later when it comes to MBA prep and stuff. But this audience is, as you told me, is already a convert audience kind of thing. So we'll not get into that. SPGen was a profile call for me. It was a no-brainer to go from a mechanical core job to an operations specialization in SPGen. So the convert was fairly easy because it's a straight fit. They did not have confusions as to, you're a mech guy, why are you going into finance or marketing or something? A mech guy going into operations is like a no-brainer for everyone. So it was kind of plain and simple to get into operations. But through the college, that's when I realized I was enjoying maybe the other marketing courses or sales related courses or something, or even consulting for that matter, more than I was enjoying core operations. There's a personal choice, but I had friends who were really in love with ops. It's just completely personal. There's no good or bad branch. Don't go into this fin versus marketing, IB versus consulting, FMCG versus, please don't go into that. All of it have their own merits. It's about what fits you. That's when L'Oreal Brandstorm happened. It's a competition L'Oreal organizes in about 30 or 35 B schools. We won the national finals and they offered me an autumn's PPI. SPGen has autumns. It's not your summers. Autumns happens in the middle of second year. So the competition cycle completes and the companies give a PPI for autumns. But if you go into a summers pedagogy B school, summers is already finished when the competition cycle closes. So they give you a final PPI. So SP is kind of at a disadvantage there because you're not getting a final PPI, you're only getting an internship PPI. But the advantage here is, as an ops guy, I was able to take that 2-month experiment to try out a sales development, sales kind of role. So L'Oreal allowed me to sit for a sales/marketing internship because they said you won Brandstorm, so we're okay with that. You don't need to sit for an ops. That's up to you. So they gave me that choice. I took that experiment, and boy, it worked wonders. I really fell in love with sales and sales development. Got a PPI, converted the PPI, worked with some sales teams, and ultimately my role was sales development at L'Oreal, where it's more to do with planning, Salesforce automation, and I don't want to go into details of what it entails. We could have further sessions, I'm sure, for that. Post that, I realized it was more a pandemic-driven decision to think of coming back to hometown and all of that. And also, I eventually wanted to get into a tech space or an e-com space. I could have done that by joining digital or tech, or e-com within L'Oreal also. But again, there was a pandemic angle to it, and Hyderabad is my hometown. So I was looking for options if Hyderabad had something. And luckily, you have Amazon's huge operations base based out of Hyderabad. And that's when I put in sat for interviews and got into a role. Currently, I work for customer service operations. My job entails when you call or email or text Amazon for a query, for customer service contact, within 60 seconds, someone picks up your phone. Within 45 seconds, someone responds to your chat. We ensure that happens. That's our KPI. So it's bang in the center of Amazon's customer service goal that they've taken. It's a very exciting place to be, very fast moving place to be, because the customer volumes keep coming and going. They change over weekends, they change over a festival. So that's how it has been. Started as an engineer, did an operations MBA, went into sales development at a beauty company, learned about those makeup products, complete variety. And then now we're back into hardcore operations at probably the company that executes things the best. Amazon executes things the best. So it's been a very colorful, very vivid journey. I'll circle back to what I said at the starting, because MBA throws open these doors. Now, if I want to switch into some sales role or a marketing role, I can sure as well apply for it. Maybe I might have to take a step back, take a slightly lower role, but the idea is you have contacts everywhere. You have people who trust your degree, who have people who trust your past work experience and your credentials. It just throws open all possibilities. That's the biggest takeaway you have to have from MBA. If you are getting into a B school you think is not the best for you, if you think, oh, well, I should have converted something higher, do not worry about it, because it's ultimately the pure learning, the network that eventually puts you in good stead and takes you where you want to be. You will figure it out. Nobody knows the right answer. Even someone who's gotten into day zero McKinsey does not know the right answer. He does not know, or she does not know if it's the right fit. So it's about exploring. You are already in the system by converting your calls or having the calls. From now on, it's a first world problem for you. You're going to choose between great and greater. You're not going to have an option that is not great. So don't worry about it. There's no FOMO factor that should come in. So that's the message. Be colorful, be vivid, do what you like. That's the message. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you so much, Sudarshan, for that elaboration on firstly how your journey has been in terms of shifting from one role to another, or say different companies. But at least from your experience, people will understand that after MBA, like you said, it opens doors to more opportunities where you can switch domains. Obviously, you might have to take like an experience cut of say 1 or 2 years, but at least it allows you the flexibility of exploring other domains. But yeah, thank you so much for that. I'll move on to Arpit now. So Arpit, a lot of questions to you, because you from a college where people would have converted NITIE, and similar league people do convert. I'm Indore, I'm Kozhikode, and other colleges of the similar league. But considering NITIE being the mecca of operations, I want to know it from you, because you have also seen the analytics side of things, IT analytics and supply chain. What kind of opportunities are available at NITIE? And say someone who is not sure about operations, but say has calls from these 4 or 5 colleges that I mentioned, would you advise them to go for NITIE and restrict their operations if in case it gets restricted after you enter into NITIE? Or it's like you can explore other roles as well apart from ops and IT? So I want you to give an elaboration on this particular aspect. So whether people should restrict their choices from the very beginning by going to NITIE, or should they explore options by going into say other colleges which are on the similar league? All over to you.
Yeah, that's a very valid question, and I get it from like my juniors, whoever are trying to get into NITIE. But like I think it's the biggest myth also that NITIE means just the operations. So if you see like the placement statistics or like the placement reports from last 2-3 years, you will not see that operation or supply chain roles exceeding 25% of the total roles that are being offered. So like NITIE has a good mix of different functions, especially supply chain, the IT related roles into like FMCG ITs or the product management side of IT operations. And then consulting roles form a very big chunk of the placements at NITIE. So, and apart from that, there are also opportunities in marketing, sales, and finance. Although they will have some supply chain or the operations flavor embedded into them, but they are like, it's not like that NITIE doesn't means marketing, finance, or anything like apart from operations. So that is actually a big myth. So if you consider even my example, I'm in a digital like technical role where like I'm with GE, and like my role is a mix of program and product management. So like especially if I talk about engineers, it is actually the like it's a very actually a nice opportunity, because if being an engineer, if you want to pursue finance or something which is not related to your experience, you will not get that opportunities in other colleges, because their people are already there with a lot of finance background. Let's suppose I want to being an engineer, I want to get into a finance role in some particular IIM, then the chances are very, I'm not saying the chances are zero, but the chances are very low, because there are people who are chartered accountants, there are people who are from economics or a good graduation from DU or something like that. But in NITIE, because everyone is an engineer, you get a level ground zero. So like even if you can say the opportunities in finance or marketing are comparatively low as compared to supply chain, but they are not zero. So there are people I've seen in my college, my batchmates, who are doing great in finance roles in different banking sectors and all. But yeah, I'll still say that like the major portion of the NITIE placements are combined across IT, supply chain, and consulting. So that is a point. But like in case you are a engineer, like, and if you want to compare me like colleges Indore, Kozhikode, and NITIE, I would always say that there are like these 3 colleges are all like they all have their goods and bads. All you need to do is to align yourself, align the profile, and align your ultimate objective. So if you think that your objectives are much much well fulfilled in NITIE, go to NITIE. If you think your objectives are something that are different from what NITIE offers, I think then you should consider. But like given the neutral objective, I think all the three colleges are very good and they provide exactly same opportunities. It's actually you which you have to align, like I'm an engineer and I want to do finance, or I'm an engineer with mechanical degree and I want to do operations. So you go to NITIE, and like I am an engineer, but I specifically want a core investment banking role. You should consider other options than NITIE. So this is what I have observed.
Okay, so probably I get what you're trying to say. It's basically you look at what options do you want to open for yourself in future. So if you want to get into core IB, then obviously NITIE would not be the ideal choice compared to other colleges. However, if you want to get into certain roles which might open only for NITIE but not for INK, because this is what I've heard. I generally want to know this from you as well, that there are some operations focused role which open only for NITIE. So if suppose a Procter & Gamble or say an Asian Paints would come at NITIE, it would open those roles only for colleges like NITIE or maybe some other IITs which are good in operations, and not for say colleges INK. Is that true? And what kind of differentiation does that make? What kind of operations role do they open for those colleges, and what is the difference between the role that they offer at NITIE?
Yeah, that's a very, very valid point. Actually, like if you see, like I would say any company which is like going to B schools, like in top 20 B schools, and they have some supply chain function, they will be hiring from NITIE for sure. And like if you talk about the specific roles, so like that specific role, I can remember very one particular area, and that is FMCG IT roles. Because FMCGs are actually like a supply chain center of excellences, and they want someone, suppose in IT. So they always will want who not only has a digital or like IT related knowledge, but also has a flavor of supply chain embedded into their courses. So I think like if you talk about Asian Paints IT, P&G IT, HUL IT, Amazon, like for example, Amazon opens many program management and roles like which are specifically open, like BOLD, there is one BOLD role. So it's a like leadership program in Amazon related to operation management. And similarly, like there are other companies, including pharma companies and all the companies that are supply chain oriented. And also like so for example, if Procter & Gamble comes to NITIE, they will open both the kind of roles, something related to product supply, something related to IT, and like and if you see one good trend is, so like if you compare last 3 years, so the roles that were opening earlier are still constant, but the new roles are also getting added, because the ratio of like that myth of NITIE being only the supply chain institute is getting actually a little bit lesser, and people are getting into newer domains. So companies are also hiring across other domains that were prevalently not there earlier.
Okay, and one last question is, different colleges have different core programs. So, PGP is what IIMs offer, and then they have the PGPM, or some colleges like, NITIE as well as IIM Kozhikode, if I remember, they have PGP Finance, which is specific to finance. So for NITIE, what different programs are offered, and which is the flagship one? And is there a difference in the placement between the flagship one and, if I remember, the sustainability management is one, or there might be other programs as well? So would you advise someone to take a program like that? Does it make a difference? Is it like, there's a big difference between the core program and this one, supporting program? So what kind of a difference is there between these 2 or 3 programs, as many as there might be?
I think like if you consider the placement perspective, there is no difference. There is a common placement across all the programs that are there in NITIE. So there are actually 2 modes of admission in NITIE. Like if you consider specifically for CAT aspirants, it is PGDIM and PGDISEM. And then there is also an option for GATE aspirants that they can get admitted through one of the flagship programs called PGDIE, that is industrial engineering. And then there are 2 other programs called PGDPM and PGDMM. So there are 3 programs from GATE admission criteria, and 2 programs are from CAT admission criteria. So placement wise, all the things are pretty much same. Like they all have a common placement, and there is no like any other of like differences among it. Yeah, but like in case you are like if you talk about sustainability program that is going through CAT, so that has a very high component of like the sustainability management and safety, given that is in the trend for a lot of companies now, specifically companies operating in supply chain. Like suppose any company you say, so they will always have some manufacturing operations which may be contributing to the harmful effects for the environment and all. So that is a program specifically dedicated to sustainability. And I think the other programs are pretty much similar, like they don't have any specific criteria.
Okay, and last question. So you said through CAT, a student can get into 2 programs. So out of these 2, which one would you recommend students to get into? There must be an exposure factor that you get more exposure into one, slightly less exposure. Obviously, I understand that placements are pooled and everything happens in a similar sort of a fashion. But obviously, because an MBA is a competitive environment, someone has to be at the top, someone has to be at the bottom. Similarly, out of these two courses, which one is the best according to you?
I think I cannot say which is the best, but like if you talk about the strength, like the program which started as a flagship among IM, I think it would be PGDIM. And then the good thing with the PGDISM is the batch size of that program is smaller as compared to PGDIM, so opportunities are very good in terms of placement. So that is also one criteria you should always consider. Like you should not specifically directly compare any 2 programs, but you also need to see other criteria, like what is the relative batch strength, and then what are the profiles offered within those smaller batch strength or like the overall scenarios. So I think there is no comparison. It all boils down that you need to align your interest, and both the programs offer really great opportunities.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arpit. That answers most of the questions that I see are coming on the chat box. But since Sudarshan and you specialize in operations, and most probably a college which is inclined towards operations, NITIE, and Sudarshan was obviously into MBA in operations. I just want to know, because he's already talked about his experiences that he actually got into a sales development role, though it was through a competition. I want to know, does the college placement allows you that flexibility that you can switch into, say, a sales focused role or marketing focus or any other domain focused role? Does the college placements allow that flexibility, considering that you guys were already into ops from the very first day of your MBA?
I think you are saying here not the right thing, because actually the good thing with NITIE is not a specialized management. So NITIE offers you a general management. So like you are not an operation management, or you are not a marketing management. You are a general management degree. So any opportunity that comes, whether it is finance, marketing, operations, anything, you are equally eligible, given like it depends on company, obviously, whether it's shortlist or not. But from the college administration and placement committee, there is no bar. Even like if you say that like if you are saying that you are from a particular program, there is no bifurcation from the placement side. Like you're open to choose anything. So for example, I am in a role which is totally not aligned with operations. Like I am in a digital technology role, and my role is mostly into product management of digital products. So like that doesn't justifies my inclination towards operations. But yeah, there would be a flavor of operations in every courses or something like that. So that would be there.
Okay. And Sudarshan, what about you? As in, does your placement committee allow you to apply for, say, marketing or finance companies, though you are specializing in ops?
So this is slightly different. In case of general management roles which come in, like your Mahindra, or even for those consulting firms which come in, like your Deloitte PwC or your Bain BCG, there is no, it's specialization agnostic. Everybody can put in their CV and apply. But when it comes to FMCGs who distinctly have operations and marketing, or Mondelez also has a finance recruitment that happens, in those cases, you're not really allowed to sit for a cross-specialized role. When you put in your CV to an HUL or a PNG or an ITC or whatever, you as an ops major can only sit for the ops role. And that's also how it's pitched to the company. So slightly different from what Arpit is saying about NITIE. But yes, that's there. It's a specialized placement process in companies which come with distinct role descriptions. But in case of general management and consulting and all of that, it's agnostic.
Okay. Got it. Thank you so much, Sudarshan, for clarifying that. So, having discussed, in detail about your the reason why you went for your MBA or specific institutes that you guys chose, we'll quickly move on to the second segment, which is talking about your experience in with respect to your summers or autumns, whichever may apply to you. So, you would have applied for different companies, different roles. You would have sat for different processes. So I want to know which companies. So basically, you don't have to name those companies, but I want to know the processes of those different companies. How did it differ from one company to another in terms of expectations? So one company might look for someone who is very creative, whereas another company might look for someone who has more of leadership skills. So this way, different companies have different sort of HR skills which they are looking at with respect to when they screen candidates. So I want to know what you deciphered from the processes that you sat, and ultimately the one that you cracked. I want you to elaborate in detail as to what was the process. How did you prepare for your summers or autumns again, and what kind of questions you were asked in the interview, and then how was your internship experience at your respective organizations? Some cracked the PPO as well, so obviously you would have done something good, and that's the reason why the company offered you a PPO. So yeah, it's like an elaborative thing. Talk about your experience of summers, and again, the first couple of months also is very grueling in an MBA context. First trimester itself, you have a lot of things thrown at you. So how did you settle your nerves and then ultimately end up in those prestigious companies in which you guys ultimately interned and then are working as well? So I'll again start with Amlan and then we'll move forward in that.
Sure, there are a lot of questions. I'm not sure which one to pick up first. Well, let me go chronologically. Settling nerves, first 2 months. I think if I were to summarize the most important activity that you have to do pre-summers, that would be preparing your CV or getting your CV in the most perfect shape. So having a good CV, having those CV points, having multiple drafts, getting it validated from multiple seniors, that I think makes a world of difference. I mean, at least in XLRI, our CV process starts even before we join our college. And I think it would be there for most of the B schools as well. And once we do join, I mean, it's a very grueling process of verification, re-verification, validation, revalidation. So my suggestion would be to kind of get in all your CV points and try to put your best foot forward. If your pre-MBA experience / CV points you feel are not that adequate, you still have those 3 months to kind of do some live projects or do things that can add value to your CV. So I think that is where I will use the first 2 or 3 months. The second question would be, how did I prepare for summers, right? So I think the pace is so hectic that I probably went in an autopilot mode. So our seniors and our placement preparation committee had a very elaborate schedule as to how they would prepare us. So after CV preparation, we had mock GDs and mock PIs, quite a lot of them. That gives us a fair amount of flavor as to what to expect. I don't think they, at least in summer placements and in summer interviews, they don't really ask a lot of subject related questions, as in the subjects that you read in your first trimester. Some companies do, not a lot. So that is not a very huge concern in terms of preparation. And I remember we used to have compendiums and, notes prepared for us so that we can quickly refer things about our subject before we step into an interview. Right. So if I were to speak of summer preparation, getting our CVs right and doing as many mock GDs and PIs as possible by forming those peer groups, that is what counts. On the D-Day, on the day of the summer internship placements, I think the first day is kind of a blur because it's usually reserved for GDs. And I remember, I mean, it starts somewhere around 3-4 a.m. and it goes till maybe 1 in the night, and you are constantly giving, being in and out of group discussions. So in those group discussions, what I would say is that you have to be yourself. You cannot fake a personality. As you said, that there are certain qualities that different companies look for, right? I would suggest against modifying your personality to suit their requirements, because ultimately, if you end up in a company and you are not being yourself, you would end up being miserable. So you and the company have to be a good fit. So without naming any companies, I know there are some FMCGs who look for very aggressive candidates, right? And the GDs are very power packed, and there's a lot of aggression involved, right? And if that's not you, and just for the sake of GD, you are trying to portray that, I don't think that would be worth it. You might convert it for the short term, but in the long run, you will be miserable in the company. On the other hand, there are companies who who give you time to think and who encourage civil discussions, right? So if that's more like you, then why not? So I was myself, all the preparation and everything boiled down to that one particular DD. Speaking of my TAS Chairman GD, right, the one that I converted. I think on the day of GD, I converted around 6 or 7 GDs, one of which was the TAS Chairman GD, which goes on for like an hour and a half, which are 8 GDs back to back. And it's almost as if like a marathon. You have to kind of keep your cool and bring about very logical points. So the ability to think of logical, straightforward points under pressure is something that you have to develop in those 2 months. And on the next day itself, TAS has a very early slot on the interview. So it comes at around like 3-4 a.m. So that's where I had my interview. Again, if I was to speak about interview questions, that is very specific to like your profile, and it was different for different candidates. For me, they dissected each and every sentence that I had written. So you have to be very thorough with your CV. So every single line that you have written, you should have not just 1 layer, but 2 to 3 layer explanation about what is this, what did you do exactly, what was the background around that. So that is how my interview went during summers. I am not sure whether I have answered everything that you have asked for, but this was something in brief. Yeah.
Okay. Just just a couple of counter questions would be: how many interviews do generally these companies conduct? So in your case, how many interviews did you sit for after the chairman GD that happened? And because it's a different process, it's not like a conventional or a traditional GD that happens in case of TAS. So what exactly is that process? Is everyone given a chance to speak individually? Like, you have to first moderate and then someone else moderates. This is what I've heard. So I want you to elaborate more on this process that you were a part of, and also the interviews. What kind of assessment do these interviews do for, say, HR people who want to get it, are specializing in HR? What do these interviewers try to assess, or in your abilities or in terms of your characteristics, which convinces them that okay, you'll be a good fit for this particular role?
Okay, again a packed question, but I'll try to answer the same. The number of interviews that I gave, I gave only 2 interviews. So here, once you convert an interview, you are signed out of the process. So I think the first interview that I gave was for AT Karni. I did not get through. It was for a consulting profile. So in XLRI, even though you are from HRM, you can apply for business roles, primarily to consulting and product management. So I had the shortlist for AT Karni, but I was not able to convert the interview. And after that, I did have a couple of HR calls. And in terms of interview, I gave the TAS interview. That was my very first interview, and I converted. So that was about it. So I just had that experience of that particular interview. If you want to know about Chairman GD, so the process is pretty simple. It's a little different, like between an online and an offline mode. So what usually happens is that a panel would have 8 to 10 members, and for each member there would be a GD. So 10 members means 10 GDs back to back, and each GD would last for somewhere around 8 to 9 minutes. So in every round, a single person becomes a chairman. So they can start from left to right or alphabetical order, right? So you as a chairman, when it was in an offline mode, you as a chairman, you get up from your chair, you approach the panelists, they give you a piece of paper, and you are given 30 seconds to memorize that topic. So you memorize the topic, you return the paper, come back to your seat, and you kind of read the topic out loud to rest of the members, right? And the members get around 10 seconds to 30 seconds to kind of jot down their thoughts, and then they start speaking on the topic. Right? Your role as a chairman is to simply observe or listen to their points, and at the end, you would be summarizing their discussion. You can intervene as a chairman if you feel that they are derailing from the conversation or they are missing the spirit of the discussion. but otherwise the chairman usually does not intervene. Then after round 1 is over of 8 minutes, then somebody else becomes the chairman and then goes and picks up the topic, and the cycle continues till all the 8 or 10 GDs are done. In an online fashion, instead of chairman reading the topic on their own, it's the panelist who reads out the topic, right? So the element of memorization is removed. I think, yeah, that is basically the format of a chairman GD. And I think the people who do well in the such GDs are the ones who basically, do not burn out towards the end, right? So what happens is that some people make very strong entries in the first 1 or 2 GDs, and towards the end, they become really silent. So instead of having peaks and the first 2 GDs and valleys in the rest, you have to remain consistent throughout. That's the first thing. And second is, you do not necessarily need to enter in every single GD, but whatever GDs you are entering, you have to make very strong and impactful points. This is like a very short 8-minute GD, right? So anytime you are repeating the topic or repeating the points mentioned in the GD, that is again a no. So that is what I would say makes the chairman GD different from the rest. As far as seeing what are they looking for in candidates in interviews, right? What are they looking for in HR candidates or candidates in general? So I sat for TAS Gen Man profile, right? And I got into TAS Gen Man profile. So and I don't think TAS HR profile and Gen Man profile had drastically different interviews, right? So the questions that they ask us are pretty much behavioral in nature, right? So I think what they are trying to gauge is how prepared is this person, and what is his ability to think on their toes, right? So say for example, you have written a line in your CV that you have done this initiative, so on and so forth, right? So they try to dig around that particular line and ask you that what exactly have you done, what was your contribution in that, and what did you learn from it, and things like that. So if you were not directly involved in that particular activity, or somehow you have faked it, right? At one point or the other, the probing would pay off and you would falter, right? And if you were actually involved and you are able to articulate your involvement properly, then they know that you actually have done the deed. Well, as a background, now that I have been involved in recruitment as a part of few of my stints, I know that all of the interviewers have a checklist, right? TAS has something called as Starter Leadership Practices. These are a list of some 10 to 11 competencies that they are looking for, right? How they are going to gauge the competencies completely interviewer specific, right? So things like, say, problem solving or initiative taking, right? So they will try to dig around in your CV and find out situations in which you were trapped and you came out somehow, right? So the list of these qualities is different for different companies, and I don't think it would be worthwhile to find it out for every company and modify your interview. Just have to be yourself. I know Amazon has Amazon leadership principles, some 10 or 11 principles, which are pretty open and pretty public, right? So TAS also has something similar. So that is what the interviewers have on their piece of paper. So anytime they observe, right, that you are exhibiting a certain criteria, then a check mark goes on your paper. And you might say that it is subjective, and that is the reason a panel has more than one interviewer, right? To kind of iron out the subjectivity between the people. So that is what I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for giving that elaboration on, again, the process of TAS pretty different than what other companies have. But what I picked up from what you said was you sat for a TAS Gen Man profile being an HR candidate. So I presume people who did XLRI BM would also have this opportunity of applying for TAS. So is it like you guys ultimately ended up in the same profile, though you specialized in HR and these people did like BM?
In TAS, there are 2 profiles, TAS Gen Man and TAS HR. So if I go in Gen Man profile, I have a bucket of options to choose from, right? Whether I want to do a Gen Man related stint or whether I would do an HR related stint. So if I wanted, I could ultimately pivot to a BM related role. Right? So, but I chose an HR related role once I joined. Initially, I had applied to TAS Gen Man instead of TAS HR for a variety of options, but once I have joined, I kind of had made up my mind to continue in HR, and that's why.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you so much, Amlan. I'll move on to Nancy now. So Nancy, if you can, probably elaborate on your experience of summers. Would have been different because it's some time right now. And I want you to also elaborate if you are involved in hiring from campus these days, because you've already spent like 4-5 years in the industry. So I want you to speak from a perspective of a student and then speak from a perspective of a recruiter as well. Like what exactly were the qualities that you would try to portray in your interview, and now what do you look at when you hire students from, say, your college or other colleges?
Sure. So how things have been is, in MDI, when we start our curriculum, right, at that point in time, apart from our regular studies, we are deeply involved in these like, preparing our CVs, just like, Amlan mentioned, right? So preparing the CV, preparing the master CV, and then working with our senior, colleagues, or you could say mentors who are assigned to us in finalizing our CVs. And then the process starts, for prepping us for GDPIs, right? So that's a very, very extensive process wherein the entire day, morning 6 till late night, we are sitting in one room based on, we are just running around the campus and getting things done with respect to GDPI and all. Yeah. So, but then, when the time of summer placement comes, right? So it's purely dependent on which organizations are giving you the shortlist. And then every organization has their individual separate processes. For some, there are, GDs followed by PIs and so forth. Certain companies have only PIs for them, right? So now for me, I did my internship with Whirlpool, right? So it was again I'll share certain instances from my PI, right? So in my PI, there were like panel of leaders from Whirlpool who were part of it. Their major objective, again, they ask from the CV that you have prepared. They go deep dive into individual things that you have mentioned in your CV, and then there are certain case study related questions, certain things that are going on maybe in their organizations, or certain kind of case studies, small little snippets they present to you, and then they check for your thought process. Your solutions might not be the correct ones, but then, how holistically are you able to think through the situation and, share the solution with them. That really helps in terms of, cracking such kind of interviews. So, there were a couple of, questions around similar case studies. So I don't recall them at this stage. It's been a long time, but that's how it has been. And then, yes, from that perspective, when you have studied thoroughly your subjects, it kind of helps in terms of giving a holistic solution in some way, because not everybody has, prior industry experience to which they can relate to. That's where that piece helps. And not only that, there are a lot of competitions that are happening these days in campuses. Various organizations, they conduct their competitions, and they give, certain opportunities for PPIs through those competitions also. So that's another aspect that I would suggest, the people who are starting their, MBAs to have a little clarity on, because, especially like, example, I would say Godrej, right? So Godrej, they have their Godrej Loud as a big competition that happens, across various campuses, and then finally people are picked up, and then they get to go through the PPIs, etc. And then if they clear that, then PPOs, right? So similarly, different organizations have different competitions. Mahindra Boardroom is again one of them, and so forth, right? So that visibility or keeping a track on those kind of competitions also help in some way to get through your summer internship. It's not only and only the route of campus summer internship process that helps.
Okay, and since you are, only one, you're once those panelists who sat for finals, got recruited at GM and currently you're working there. So I want to know, how was your finals different from your summers in terms of the expectations of the recruiter? Because like Amlan had mentioned that, their expectations from someone who has just come for their MBA and just 2 months in their MBA would not be that much compared to someone who would have spent the academic rigor of say 1.5 years before you sit for your finals. So I want to know, how was your finals different from your summers? And again, were the questions on the similar lines, but then the expectations would have been different, or the questions were different entirely? So I want to know it from your perspective. How do HR interviews happen? There might be certain frameworks that in HR, obviously you have some models, some frameworks. So is it like your questions are based around those things, or is it just about you? How did you spend your 2 years, and then your interest, your passion, hobby? What exactly does it entail?
So I would say, every organization has their different way of interviewing and different philosophy that they follow. Now, with respect to General Motors, if I talk about, right, so my GD was, based around a topic around performance management. There at that point in time, a lot of stuff was happening around going away from bell curve, moving to frequent feedbacks, and also companies were working on that. So that was one of the topic that we had. And once our GD was done, I would say my interview happened with the vice president of the function. So again, that was a very different experience altogether that I have faced in various other organizations. If I have to put forth, it's more around, I would say, behavioral side of it that is being tested. What's your thought process? What's your approach? Your behavioral aspect against your knowledge on certain subjects. Your knowledge has been tested during the GDs. Right. So during the PIs, that is something that was under more focus that I felt at that point in time. Right. So so that's how the process has been. And if like you were talking about, when you are on the other side of the table, what is it that you're looking at when you're hiring from campus? So though I do not have a direct experience in hiring from the campuses, but from what I understand, we do have a framework. We have certain behaviors that we kind of encourage or want employees to follow from an organization perspective. And then we kind of check the fitment, with all those behaviors, how the new hire would fit into the organization with respect to those behaviors. Right. So that's where, what I would suggest is, while you are preparing for any organization, it is important to understand what's their vision and values, and then, what all are their behaviors that they really promote in the organization, so all those things are available on the company websites. So I would advise the, people to follow that, read through, be prepared before, sitting up for any PIs or GDs for that matter, that kind of give little hints, how you could prepare yourself for any particular organization.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you so much for your time, Nancy. I'll move on to Abhinaba right now. So Abhinaba, again, similar questions to you as that I've asked to Amlan and Nancy.
Yeah, first of all, sorry, my video is off. The network is really patchy here. Yeah, so I'll move forward with the answer. Firstly, when you move to a B school, as you said, the first 2 months can be grueling. And as Amlan correctly mentioned, the most effort wala task is the CV preparation. So right now, as these people get into the B school, my suggestion would be to get your points in order. The organization and finalization of these points are a different ballgame altogether. So the best thing you can do right now is collect all your points, put them in one location, just sort it out so that you don't have to scramble when the D-Day comes. Yeah, that would be one advice. Apart from that, when I speak about my process, I did not sit actually for summer placements because I had participated in a competition that was conducted by PNG, and it was conducted before we even stepped into the B school. That is the Emerging Leaders Program, and I was selected through that. My interviews and everything that happened before the summer placements actually took place. It's not that I did not prepare. There was a very comprehensive preparation that went behind all this. So basically, there are certain parameters, as the other two mentioned before me, that a company looks for. there are certain values, principles, etc. that a company tries to make out of your CV as well as the answers you provide to them. So a person should gauge what kind of person he is first of all, because he needs to find a company that fits to his thought process and fits to his way of working. Otherwise, he won't be able to thrive and succeed. That is very difficult in a school environment because it is very, a very herd mentality driven place. कि भाई consulting is the most coveted, मुझे वहीं जाना है. So that should not be the thought process, I feel. Thankfully, I had brilliant guidance so that I could at least think clearly. So another advice would be seek out people who have already been in that journey and try to make them your mentors, because nothing else will help you other than them. They have already been in your shoes and they have seen the confusion and whatever goes on in a B school. So to get some clarity, talk to people who have already been there. They'll be able to help you very much. Once you get that sense of clarity, try to build your profile according to what the company wants from you. There are millions of things that every one of us in a B school would have done, but to present them is a different thing altogether. So you need to certain critical points that you need to show to your recruiters, and then get a process out of it. So that is about the how you should prepare for the process. Coming to the actual D-Day, that will be really random. So we can't pin our hopes on a single company. You should be open-minded. And as you have seen examples of Sudarshan and millions of others who have done an MBA, it's not the end of the road for you. It's just the beginning. So don't take too much pressure or stress over an SIP, because after all, it's a randomized process. And the best you can do is prepare a cohort of companies that you want to get into according to your knowledge, what you have gathered, and yeah, try the best to convert them.
Okay, thank you so much, Abhinaba. Just a couple of questions to you as well. So PNG has this PNG 64. I think Sudarshan would be knowing about this. So it's like all the possible HR questions that can be asked to you in the interviews. And at the same time, I want to know a little bit about the PNG Emerging Leaders Program. Obviously, it opens for all the premier colleges. So how exactly that happens? And do you have any sort of assessment rounds in that, like interview rounds or anything through which you get recruited as a summer intern, and then based on your summer internship, you get a PPO? So how does that thing work, like PNG Leaders Program, Emerging Leaders Program?
Yeah. So the PNG Emerging Leaders Program is one of the flagship events that PNG uses to recruit people from premier B schools. It happens through a multitude of rounds. The first round being an assessment round. Again, that assessment is quite similar to what all people will face quite soon in their summer internship processes. So it is based on that idea. Take them early if you want. Okay, so the idea is totally that. Again, the 64 questions, or I haven't heard of it, quite frankly, but they are similar for mostly all the companies that are out there, because they want to assess your personality and what kind of behaviors you will assess, demonstrate in particular situations. That shows what kind of person you are. So I think most of the colleges have a placement preparation committee that already has access to such questions. So they'll be the better people to guide them on that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Thank you so much for elaborating on the process. Thank you. I'll move on to Sudarshan. Sudarshan, similar questions to you because it's operations plus sales. So again, take us through your journey of having sat for L'Oreal, which was through a competition, but obviously you would have different rounds, and L'Oreal, because my friends also had cracked L'Oreal Brandstorm in our time. So for them, they had to give some tests. I don't know what tests were those, but you had to clear those tests, and then you had 3 to 4 rounds. But I don't remember what the name of those tests were. So I want you to explain how that process entirely worked. And then because you've currently switched to Amazon, so you would have sit for interviews at Amazon as well. So how was that interview different from what you sat for during your Brandstorm finals?
Fair question, Harsh. So I'll start with L'Oreal. So after your brand storm conversion, when the whole PPI process takes place, the only advantage you get in a PPI process is your CV shortlist is discounted. Whereas in a normal process, you are part of 100 CVs that flow into the recruiter. So the first round, like you said, that test is something it's called SD1, if I'm not wrong. It's more a multiple choice test about digital marketing metrics and general digital metrics. I have not seen anyone be eliminated because of that. It seems more like a hygiene check, which they get you to do it. They record those scores and keep it in the database. I don't know where they use it, to be very honest. In the 2.5 years, I did not. That test never came back as a demon to haunt me or anything, because I was 100% ops guy. I was not really sure of. My marketing friends knew all those click rate metrics and all of that, and they were able to do it far quicker than I was able to finish that test. But it's more a hygiene thing. Normally, when they have a group of people doing the PPI together, they put a GD, wherein a market research case study is given. When they go to campuses like Calcutta or SP or any of these campuses to recruit, they do a GD round. In my case, we were only 4 people or something, so they did not do a GD round. They took direct interviews with. They called us to their office, and they have an experienced panel staff. Normally, it was only 1 round, wherein there's 1 HR or 2 HR sitting, and there's 1 experienced marketer from the office, from the head office, who takes that round. And the interview is explores a lot about your personality. It was a 60-minute interview. I think I was the one speaking for about 50 minutes of those interviews. They make you talk a lot. The idea of L'Oreal, the way they assess people is they bring out the personality in the person rather than, it's not a very technical round, to put it very bluntly. It's not 100% technical. It's not a very strong on techniques and concepts and conduct. Those are there. There's those basic hygiene questions do come in. Like if you want to launch a luxury product in a conservative market like Chennai. So some such questions do come in here and there, but a lot of it is about your personality. They asked me, have you used makeup products as such? They were expecting me to say no, probably, and I did that. And then they had an immediate follow-up question that said, if you have not used the product, what challenges do you think you would have if you're trying to sell something? So the bottom line question was, there's nothing sexist or anything about this. The bottom line question is, if you were asked to sell something you've never used in life, will that be a challenge? How would you go about it? That was one question. The other question was, if I want to launch a brand for youngsters, what are the things I must avoid? What are some deal breakers that I must avoid to keep these youngsters using my brand? What are the challenges? For example, I'll walk you through this question. For example, what are the challenges if I want to launch a face wash for the young audience? Okay. I just took a minute to think, and I said the first challenge I see personally and from my friends is that fighting for drawer space of a youngster is very difficult, because cost of switching is very low. Loyalty is very low. People switch brands very quickly because everything is accessible on Amazon, Nykaa, or your store. So if you want to sit on the shelf of a youngster, it's going to be a challenge. That's your first thing. So stickiness is your challenge. And the second thing is, since it's a face product, since it's a beauty product, since it's something of vanity and something you use to look good and confident, you have to avoid side effects. Even if I get one pimple because of using a face wash, that's it. I may not have a brand another chance. I might just switch over. So stuff like this. They make you think. I really did not need to know about the product. I did not need to know the technical differences of a foundation or an eyeliner or something. The core business insight, how you would change a consumer behavior to make a product stick, make a product move about. So stuff like that. So that was about 50 minutes of talking that brings out a lot of your personality. There are some HR questions that come in between based on a simple PPT you send them. You send them a simple PPT about your big achievements, your personal interests and stuff like that. They just question stuff like that. They looked at my resume. There was a lot of R&D from my previous profile. There was some campus-related tech innovations and stuff. This is all very startup-y, innovative-y, state of the art. But tomorrow you'll have to go to say Chhattisgarh and talk to a distributor who won't speak your language. Do you think you would fit something like that? You look like a guy who'd probably work for an Uber or a Google. Why are you in a place where you want to go to Chhattisgarh and talk to a distributor? So that was a bomb question that they throw on. They have it. I mean, like someone pointed out earlier also, they know that this role requires personality ABC, and this person seems to be XYZ. Is there a marriage that can happen? So that was a bouncer question they threw at me. I gave an answer saying, I just want to learn from ground up. Eventually, I'll move into a digital role in L'Oreal. That's the way forward. You have to prepare for these questions that come by. It's very simple. If you're a mechanical guy and you sit for a digital marketing role, it's an obvious question, right? Why do you want to go from here to here? So when when you know that your CV is not exactly what the role demands, you have to prepare for these questions. It always is the case. People sitting for consulting, people sitting for investment banking, they will be asked. And a lot of them are engineers. I'm sure in the audience also, they will be asked, you were a civil engineer, why are you doing investment banking? So be prepared for those questions. Those bouncers will come. Although the recruiters know that most engineers switch to MBA, just to listen to what you say, just to listen to how much you have thought through this, those questions will. Okay. Then moving on to Amazon, like Abhinaba also pointed out, it's those, just like PhD has 64 questions, Amazon has 14 leadership principles. Amlan also pointed out earlier. It's very behavioral. Amazon's concept is, if someone has done it in the past, I have faith that they'll do it again in the future. So to get you to prove that you did something in the past, those 14 leadership principles come out on board. And as Amlan also pointed out, it's public. You Google it, it'll tell you what are those questions. There are sample questions on Grapshala. It's all very simple. Tell me about a time you challenged your manager. Tell me about a time you found out of the box. Tell me about a time you did something outside your KPI. Stuff like this. It's not like, even for the 64 questions of PNG, it's not like you need to have 64 stories. Nobody has 64 stories. You are coming into placements maybe with 2 years of work experience or 0 if you're a fresher. And you probably did that one particular, organized one particular event in your college fest. Or you sat with the placement committee and helped them do something. These are not really much. You just put them on a CV because in the these are the things you try and develop your 3 wins you have, 6 or 4 wins you have, and dig deep. Try to answer all those 4 or 50 questions with 3 or 4 wins. See if you did. You will not realize that you've done so much until you start writing down answers to those questions. You say, tell me about time you went against your boss. You first start, you might think, no, I never did that. I got a task, I did, and the task was appreciated. I got a best employee award, but I never went against my boss. But write down what you did. There will be a point where the boss might not have directly told you, but the institution, but the team or the brand strategy could have been X, but you would have challenged it saying, let's try doing Y. And you did it and it worked. You may not have directly challenged your boss, but there is some amount of critical thinking, some amount of pushback you did to get this done. Your fest convener said, let's go with ABC, but you said, no, I think this will work well for my fest. And I changed the design, I changed the direction of that particular event, and it brought in more people. So this is how you narrate your wins. And both these processes, PNG and Amazon, initially it appears as if, I'll be very frank, it appears as if anybody can crack it because it's just not technical, it's your story, you can twist it the way you want. It appears that way, but the recruiters are very, very well trained to look through it. They'll dig deep at the right point. They use a simple framework: situation, task, action, result. That's a simple framework you have to answer. What is the situation? What is the task? Situation is your broad problem statement. Task is your KPI, drill down to those bullet points. Action is what did you do, and the result is what was the impact, what was the change based on it. And they'll drill down to this. Do you think this is what caused it? Don't you think there were other factors that helped you arrive at it? Let's say you say, I went to, for example, I added extra advertising boards or display boards for my event and 100 people turned up. They'll obviously ask you, if you did not add that, don't you think those 100 people would have anyway come? So you should have answers to that. Why is your approach causing a delta, causing an improvement? It's an obvious question. If I hire you, what extra are you going to bring? That's one thing Amazon or PNG, they're going to do that. And there's always one more round in Amazon, which I think now is an industry standard across. It's called a bar raiser round. Come into the team, are you raising the average quality of the team? If you walk into the room, the average quality of the room must go up. That's one round they conduct apart from the regular rounds. Regular rounds are conducted with people, the team which is hiring. This bar raiser is conducted by an experienced Amazonian who comes in and tries to bring out those answers, tries to make a cognizant story of all that you're saying, and then they put out the result. Bar raiser is used in Google, in Facebook, probably FMCG to start with. I'm not aware of that, but that's how it works. So just to summarize, be prepared for those questions where your CV does not fit the job role. You want to do it because of your dreams or whatever, your whatever goals you have. Be prepared for that misfit question. Be prepared for these behavioral questions. They are not as easy as it sounds. Write down your stories. Like somebody here, I'm sorry again, I missed the name. Someone here said, if you have a CV point, you should have 3 backstories behind it. Why did that CV point come in the first place? So have those backstories ready. Be critical of yourself. Your CV is a very upsold version of yourself. You say, I created this impact, I saved 100 crores for my company, the growth came 20%. Be critical of yourself. In this 20% of growth which I gave to my team, how much was my contribution? What did I say? If I had not done this, would the growth have been 15% or 10% or less? So start criticizing each of your points in your CV, and then no interviewer can criticize. So that's the simple moral of the story.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sudarshan. Actually, it was very insightful, the kind of questions you said that you were asked in your interviews. It actually would have helped the people who actually aspire to get into companies like L'Oreal and Amazon going forward. So I think that was very elaborate, and thank you on your part for doing this. So I'll move on to the last panelist, which is Arpit. So Arpit, similar questions to you, as in just take us through your summer internship journey, as in the companies that you sat for, ultimately you cracked GE. And as far as I know, GE, the leadership program that GE offers, it offers you and it puts you in rotations. So, you have 6 months of rotation in one division, and then you get rotated to another division for 6 months. And then sometimes, as far as I know, for FMP, they do send people abroad as well for one stint. So I want to know, what exactly have you undergone? As of now, it's pandemic, obviously you cannot go abroad, but then what exactly are you into in terms of your requirements from your role? And then first talk about the process and then about the role that you are in currently.
I think most of the things that is common between all the B schools has already been discussed, so I will not repeat them. And if I talk about process from a NITIE perspective or a general perspective from a fresher's point of view. So I think when I entered NITIE, to be honest, I was actually very much less confident about myself, because I see people all around having 98 plus percentile scores, coming from best of the colleges, having great profiles. And I was a normal fresher, and I thought that kahan aa gaya bro, I should have waited for 2 more years. And a lot of thoughts were roaming around in my mind, to be very honest. But I think I should be thanking a lot to the mentors that I got. So one thing I can very much proudly say about NITIE is the awesome commitment that the different placement committees and the student preparation committees do, and they devote a lot of time to juniors, specifically during the first 3 months, which are actually quite hectic. So they put in a lot of efforts, they organize GDs and all, and actually they were much helpful. And also, when you enter NITIE, there are very few people who can be very confident and they prepare only a specific domain. So suppose there are people who says that I have a relevant work ex and relevant profile for consulting, I would be giving a lesser time to other areas and I will be specific to consulting role. But when you go as a fresher, you don't have actually that confidence inside you. And then you have to prepare almost all the things in some limited amount of times and in limited amount of portions, so that you are prepared for most of the things, not fully, but at least you know something so that you don't become blank. So that was also one thing, that because there was a buddy mapping process. So I could connect with someone who has consulting experience, someone who has a FMCG experience, someone who has a IT experience, and also the alignment is done based on your profile. So you have people who are a fresher and then got into particular XYZ company and so on. So that process overall helped me a lot. And I think going forward, if I have to suggest someone what is the key things for a summer placement procedure, I think the most important thing is your time that you devote for your CV. So CV is your biggest strength, and like Sudarshan also mentioned, for every point I actually use this strategy. Like I was having every point backed with some particular story that if someone asks me about that point, I'm all ready. I actually want the interviewer to ask me from my CV. And the second important thing that I think is another very crucial thing is your preparation about behavioral questions. And when you combine CV and behavioral question along with the intent that you show for that particular company, I think that's a perfect recipe getting created. So for example, you generally get your shortlist a day or 2 days before the actual procedure, and then you know that what kind of rough shortlist you will be getting. So start preparing about that companies in specific. What are those companies? What are they doing? And what is their recent trends? And then try to mold your answers such a way that they include that information along with your answers. And I think that really helps. So like process in GE, I think it was quite similar standard process. A GD followed by a personal interview that was actually more focused on what you know, what is your CV telling, and that was standard process. I will not say that that was any specific details, but like, yeah, I said that CV was the key weapon to success for any interviews in summer placement process. And you're talking about my role in GE. So yeah, so it has been a great experience so far, like being part of DTLP program. So you get to experience different roles out of every 6 months. So either you can switch to different teams, you can switch to different domains. So like, for example, in my first 6 months, I was working as a technical product manager, and then now I'm sort of working in lean and Kaizen space as program manager. So you get 4 opportunities to explore different things, and then you actually choose one thing for you based on the learnings from all the 4 rotations. And you're talking about the rotations being into abroad. So yeah, there is always an opportunity when you work as a member of DTLP or any other leadership program that GE offers. But unfortunately, due to pandemic, it's actually I've not been able to go to office itself. So it's actually I joined the onboarding virtually, and I think it is going to be at least 2-3 months more until we get things sorted. But yeah, like it's been a great experience working as a G. You get a lot of exposure. You get a like high visibility projects working under the leadership. So it's a good experience, specifically like for a fresher like me.
Okay, thank you so much, Arpit. Having talked about your summer experiences, so probably just the last segment before we take the questions from the chat box, the live questions. So because operations and HR are not the the most people do not opt for these specializations. It's only if you're sure you go for either HR or operations compared to finance and marketing, which are considered more traditional, and more people opt for those specializations. So I want to know what exactly is the career trajectory for someone who opts for HR or someone who opts for operations. What kind of industries or what kind of roles do they find themselves in, say 10 years down the line, or say 5 to 10 years down the line? What exactly is the career trajectory of an HR student or an operations student? So I want to know it from you guys individually. So I think Amlan, you can start with what exactly is the career trajectory that's going to be there for you, say maybe 10 years down the line. Do you become like say a chairman of a particular division in Tata, or like how does this thing work for different HR students who are there in different companies?
Right, sorry, I was on mute. The trajectory is very company and industry specific, but I can lay out a generic outline of how your career could progress. Going into HR, I think there are 3 or 4 possible roles that you can get into. There are COE roles called Center of Excellence roles, right, where you are into a very specific sub-function within HR. There are shared services or HR operations role, right, which are more implementation and transaction oriented. And there are these more common roles that are coming up these days, which are the HRBP roles, in which you are basically wearing a lot of hats, and you are responsible for the HR imperatives and initiatives for a particular department or domain and organization. So you can have a sales HRBP or a finance HRBP or an operations HRBP. So that person is responsible for translating the business requirements of say finance or operations into certain HR imperatives and HR initiatives. And they basically have a dual line reporting to the operations head and the HR head, right? So depending upon where you start, your trajectory could be different. But more or less, say 5 to 6, or even say, as you say, 10 years down the line, you could be an AGM or a DGM heading a particular HR function, right? A sub-function within HR, right? So I know of people who have 10 to 12 years of experience, and they lead this particular division called organizational effectiveness. Basically, they look after performance appraisal, compensation, and rewards, right? So you kind of become an owner of multiple areas within HR, right? That is how a typical progression of an HR student looks like. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amlan. Yeah, I'll move on to Nancy.
So, to add on to what Amlan just said, right? So, yes, it's, there are these three, I would say, major circles in HR, an individual could be part of. COEs, or Center of Excellence, may include talent acquisition. It may include, talent management and development. It may include compensation and benefits, right? And then there are the CO, apart from the COEs, there is this shared service or operations, HR operations kind of roles, right? And then there is this HR business partnering role, wherein the individual is responsible for end-to-end managing the employee life cycle of the employees that they are supporting, right? And as well as managing the expectations or need of the business function they are supporting. And they are basically, I would say, so like, Amlan mentioned, there are various hats that this individual needs to wear, right? One of the hat is working within the, HR team with respect to various processes, various, aspects. The second one is supporting the business with respect to their needs. The third one is, for the employee grievances, if there are any, working on that, investigations and all this kind of stuff. And then the other one is working between various functions to drive the HR agendas, right? So and so forth, multiple things. And then when you look at the career trajectory, right? So from that perspective, somebody who has an experience of, I would say, 10 years or so, so again, it varies from which industry, which sector you are part of. So in startup, if you talk about, right, somebody with that kind of experience might be a CHRO of that particular organization, right? But when you talk about big MNCs where, the headcount and the function is way too big, there you might end up being leading, certain, I would say, maybe a COE or, the HR business partner or any particular site for that matter for that organization. So, it really varies from industry to industry, company to company, how you might end up growing up, within the organization. But yes, there is that, I would say, every individual has their own goals, how they want to grow and where they want to grow, right? So from that perspective, once you enter into this side, after completing MBA, based on what organization you are in, based on, what kind of policies they have with respect to moving internally, horizontally, vertically, etc. Those kind of decisions could be taken further.
Okay, makes sense. I think. Thank you so much. A lot of people who actually want to specialize in HR are not aware of what they are going to experience in their summers. What kind of roles do they get, and firstly, how do they make themselves suited for those roles? So I think this would clarify a big deal about what they can expect from, say, doing an MBA in HR. What exactly they'll be eligible for, say, 5-10 years down the line. But yeah, thank you so much, Amlan and Nancy. So talked about HR, let's move to operations again. Careers in operations. So Sudarshan, if you can give like a glimpse of how a career trajectory of someone who specializes in operations would look like. And similar question would go to Arpit also after, you have done.
Thanks, Harsh. So it's pretty straightforward. Operations, you have some multiple lines that pan out once you get placed. Some people are put into logistics planning, wherein, to put it simply, you have to manage the truckloads that are moving across the country, transporting goods and services. You have to manage that optimally. It's always a mix of delivery, on-time delivery versus cost. That's what ops is majorly about, and it's very important for the firm that operations works efficiently, because it frees up room in the P&L, and that's where your firm is probably better than others in delivering on time. There are other cases when there's a quickly done launch or something is changed very quickly in the system. Your operations setup should be very agile to adapt to that change. If there's a price drop, there's a packaging change. Now, if you look at any toothpaste, if there's a say $60 and there's a carton that says $45 suddenly, it's an offer price that's running for a week. For you, it's an offer price. You walk into a store, pick it up. But to make that package change, to ensure that the 50 rupee packaging is not sitting on the shelf, but 45 only is sitting on the shelf for that 1 week, is a nightmare. You don't. So anytime you walk into a store and see these limited offers, please thank the operations people and the sales people who made it happen. So stuff like this is there, and there's the other role of demand planning that's also part of operations. For example, even in L'Oreal operations, they do a lot of demand planning, which is when you have a long-term target for the year, you have X number of crores that comes with you. It's broken down into many targets that X category must do 25% of those X crores, and then you divide it further into the products you have, and then you do a monthly forecast. You put seasonality into it. If there's Diwali, you want to spike it up. If there's another product launching that's going to be fresh in the market, your older products normally dip. So all these you account into. You do a demand planning exercise month on month. It's revised where you sit alongside marketing and sales development, sales planning people, and revise these numbers. So that's one function of people do. There's of course plant operations, which I think P&G people are very hired from. There's one in Hyderabad, there's one in Bhopal, I think. Plant operations have their own challenges, which you are put to. A lot of your fundamentals in inventory costs, service levels, reverse logistics, all of these fundamentals that you learn in your B school will come into play. Ops is very, very technical, very math oriented, and also has a lot of people involved, because you always have a set of people you manage, be it the flow people, be it the transport in charge, with the operations in charge. So it's a very well-rounded role, and it teaches you teaches you efficiency, teaches you processes. It's always learning processes, how to cut costs and all of that. The other advantage of gives you is people in operations are generally do switch into sales and sales development in organizations. If the organization permits the flexibility, that's also there. There are HR policies that prevent that. Some companies are okay with that. But I've seen a lot of operations people becoming sales managers, sales managers, because they are kind of linked. It's about stock supply, putting the stock on the shelf and all of that. So there is that amount of flexibility. And once you are into sales, obviously, you marketing also opens up to you and stuff. So like I said, no limit to possibilities, but the functions are as such: logistics, demand planning, plant operations. This is what I have understood, at least. Maybe the others can add on to this.
Sure. Arpit, I would like you to also add on to this particular thing, like from not just ops, but ops and IT analytics, obviously, because you are a part of that profile as well. So what exactly a career for in GE itself, and plus similar kind of roles that if you probably switch in future, what would it look like for you?
Yeah, so like I think Sudarshan covered most of the things that were pertaining to specifically ops, and I'll cover just a few more components that I think there are related to supply chain. So I think if you talk about ops as a stream of MBA, the whole point is about optimization. It may be around cost, it may be about delivery, it may be about safety, and everything that makes the customer experience better and helps the company to generate more and more free cash flow. So like Sudarshan covered most of them, and I think those are the pretty relevant ones. The center of the operation roles remains around analytics and your real-time decision making, which I think are the summary of the different operation roles. And if I talk about operations and IT, so basically if someone is having a inclination of digitization, I think supply chain digitization is a very core topic that is going through in industry, specifically consulting industry is having a lot of assignments related to supply chain digitization. So that is one area that you can look out for. And given the demand that is being created by the ever-changing scenarios and also the rise of digitization across different companies that we see, I think that would be a great deal in the future. And if I talk about myself, so my role is actually a mix of program management, project management, and product management because I'm switching in different rotations. So basically, if I'm working for even if a supply chain product, so that product is a digital product. And then I may be asked to do a product manager role or a program manager role or a project manager role. So I will explore the different areas where I can contribute, and accordingly, like the final decision can be made. But I think the whole focus remains around the use of data, the use of predictive analytics, and overall the use of your expertise knowledge across the different domains.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arpit, for adding on this particular aspect. So now because we have covered all the segments that we had to discuss, we'll just take a few questions and wrap up in the next 10 minutes. So a question straight away to you, Arpit, would be, which one to choose amongst NITIE and IIM Lucknow for ops and supply chain management? So Ashutosh has asked this question. So I would want you to throw some light on this.
I think I would be very diplomatic here. I cannot give you a specific answer. It always aligns you to the profile that you have, the interest that you have. I've tried my best to give the pros and cons, but it will be really very difficult for me to give you one answer.
Sure. I totally understand. Chirag is asking, what are the diverse job roles that you get in operations, excluding the manufacturing sector? So maybe Sudarshan or Arpit, any of you can take this question.
So I think FMCG is the biggest winner here. Manufacturing sector is probably not the biggest share of the operations recruiter. FMCG is the biggest share, and it's so dynamic. And FMCG has had a long affair with MBA students for I don't know how long now. So that's your biggest bet. FMCG is your biggest bet. Apart from that, maybe some white good companies like Samsung or Honda or Bajaj, Castrol. There's a company called Pernod Ricard which makes booze. I don't know. They make multiple brands of booze. They also recruit for operations. With anything else, these are the ones I've heard of at least.
Yeah, I think there are two more areas that I think Sudarshan would have been covered. So one is e-commerce. And the second one is logistic companies. So that are actually the major recruiters after FMCG.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you for answering that question. The other question is, does IT WorkX resonate well with ops? And if yes, then please shed some light on it. And the other question which I'm getting from Pranjal is, what makes a perfect profile for TAS? So Amlan will answer this question after we are done with the IT question. So yeah. So Arpit, because you have an IT profile, so I think you'll be the perfect one to maybe answer this question, and then Amlan can answer that specific question related to TAS.
Can you please repeat the question?
So it was, does an IT WorkX resonate with operations as a specialization? And if so, then what? Please shed some light on that.
I would say it resonates pretty higher ratio because because before summers I was not sure I am getting into a digital ops type of role. So I was actually preparing myself for most supply chain roles only. And there I found that if you have a knowledge of different technologies, the knowledge of data and its management, I think that's the core pillars of operations in the nowadays. So even if you consider any company operating nowadays, you would find that the operation of those companies, even the supply chain of those companies, are like highly affected by the digitization processes. So knowledge of IT always helps you, specifically if that knowledge is around ERPs or anything that helps align operations with the other departments of the company, including finance, including sales. So I think IT is a key enabler there, and then you can always leverage your IT experience for any op related roles.
Okay, thank you so much, Arpit. Yeah, moving to Amlan.
Yes, I don't think there's a perfect task profile as such, right? It's basically you need to have a decent, good CV. That's it, right? Unlike other companies who do a lot of filtering in the CV shortlisting round, TAS actually releases a lot of CV shortlists. So, I mean, so say for example, consulting, the CV shortlists are notoriously low, right? They do their majority filtering there, and then they have interviews and GDs. In TAS, the filtering happens in the chairman GD and not in the CV round, right? So that is the differentiator. As far as CV round is concerned, it's actually a mix of your CV and the answer to those HR questions about your aspirations in life, strengths, weaknesses, statement of purpose. There is a detailed 10, 14 questions that you have to answer. So it's a mix of those that creates your shortlist. What are the points that you need to consider in your CV? Well, it has to have, well, people use this term balanced CV, right? But basically it has to be a decent, good CV. Your academics should be good. Positions of responsibility should be decent. If you do not have work experience, there should be some internship experience. Again, it should not be like there are zero extracurriculars or co-curriculars. There should be some extracurriculars and co-curriculars. So basically, which means that the person has tried out different things in life, right? When you talk about consulting CVs, they always mention this term spikes. You need to have spikes in your CV, right? I obviously having spikes help, right? And if you have spikes, it's not that you won't get shortlisted in TAS. So spikes definitely help, but I think they're more concerned about the fact that you have a broad range of experiences. People have this misnomer that if you have a social or CSR kind of an experience or an NGO related experience, it helps. It helps in almost every company, right? It's not just TAS. So it goes ahead to show that you have done different things in life. Right, there's a personality of you outside of say work or outside of your college, so that is there, and yeah, that would I would say that having a good decent CV works for us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Amlan. The next question is from Rajat. He's asking Sudarshan specifically: is SAP software used in your role, or what kind of other softwares or tools do you generally use? Hello, Sudarshan, can you hear us?
Sorry, I have trouble with my internet. Was that question for me?
Yeah. So what kind of
Hello,
softwares do
can
you
you
use?
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, I think there's some issue with his internet. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next question probably. So Arpit,
Yeah.
I would like. Are you back? Okay, great. So what kind of softwares do you use in your profile currently?
It's frozen now. I can't.
I'll come back to you, Sudarshan. I'll come back to you. Let's move on quickly. So Arpit, next question would be to you. So is it someone is asking, then I'm looking for project management, more like project manager roles or program manager roles, and having 22 months of work experience. Is what kind of companies this person should target, and what should their preparation strategy be in the first 3 months of their MBA so that they get prepped for summers?
So, like, I think the most important thing to consider for these roles, I think, would be relevant work experience. If you like, even if you don't have exact like required work experience for a project manager, but like your overall alignment should somehow link to a project manager role. Like you can showcase some skills that are actually relevant to project manager. So like, and then there are some productivity tools that you should be aware of. So basically, like you can have some bit knowledge of about like the standard principles across Six Sigma and Lean and Kaizen. So that can also be helpful. And I think in every company which is having an in-house product can be your target. Like it can be any company across any domain. But if that company, whether it's a tangible product or it's an intangible product, if it is a service, anything that is producing a in-house product, I think that company would surely be a right candidate for you to have a project manager role there. And project manager role is something very diverse. It can be around any domain also. So you need to align your interest with what variety of project management role you want to get in. So I think there is no right or wrong answer here, no specific answer here. It's a very broad answer that you need to figure it out what is the exact line of stream of project management that you want to get in.
Okay, makes sense. And the next question by Devjyoti is again to you. I don't know if there is some truth in this question, but he's asking that, is there any sort of differentiation that these organizations make between people who join from NITIE or people who join from IIMs?
I don't get it, the question. I'm sorry, I did not get the question.
Actually, this person is asking that, when you join a company, you are joining from NITIE. Suppose someone joins a similar sort of a profile from, say, an IIM Kozhikode or an IIM Indore. Is there a differentiation between these two employees that the company does in terms of, say, CTC offered, or in terms of the role? Is it better for you guys or worse for you guys? And how does it matter between? So it's basically, I think what they're trying to ask is the difference between an IIM tag and, studying at NITIE.
I think, to all my knowledge, I think there is no such discrimination. That's a simple, short answer I can give.
Yeah, it's a very crisp answer, I guess. Yeah, the next question is actually to Nancy. So some people have been asking, like Rajat, Sanskar has been asking as well, that what kind of courses should they do before entering a B school if they want to specialize in HR? So what would you suggest to these students, in these couple of months that they have at hand?
So what I would say is, B schools, they take care of, the entire curriculum, what they have to teach and all those things, right? So I don't think before entering the B school, there is something related to HR that they need to work upon. But yes, what happens is when you are entering into a B school, there is a very different way things are taught through case studies, through various, presentations and those things, right? Maybe you might want to work on your Excel skills. Maybe you want to work on your Microsoft skills, be it on presentations or all those things. So these things kind of carry forward along with you, not only in MBA, but when you move towards any, organization. These are certain core skills that one should have.
Okay. Thank you so much. And probably we're done with this particular, segment as well as the session. Just to all of you who are there in the panel today, just one, if you have to give like 2 cents from your side to these students, your juniors or people are joining different colleges, what would be your advice to them? As in, how do they take these 2 months, or at the same time, how do they handle the academic rigor or whatever rigor is there in that particular B school? So your 2 cents of advice to these students who are joining different colleges. Yeah, I'll start from Amlan and then we can again move forward.
Sure. I would say to the students who are about to join is do not worry too much about what you should do before joining a B school. I would say relax and chill and probably get as much sleep as you can, because you won't be getting a lot once you do join. So try and relax. And if you want to do any courses or any certifications, I don't think those have really a lot of value. Nancy rightly suggested get a grasp on Excel and PPT. Those would be friends for life, and a lot of people do not know the basics, so that would definitely help. Another thing that I would like to say which would help is learn a little bit of accounts or accounting. That is a subject that especially engineers struggle a lot. That is one of the first topics that we read in a B school, and engineers, I know I struggled with all the credits and debits. My balance sheet has never matched, so I would suggest to get a hang of accounting before you enter into a B school. And knowing accounting, it helps you appreciate and analyze a business a little better. Once you are in a B school, CVs and getting your mock GDs, mock PIs, and if you have the capacity and the time left, one definite advantage would be to do some live projects or crack some case comps, right? The time is of essence in the first 3 months. Usually you would not have the time, but if you do, If you are smart with your time management, you would be able to crack a case comp or do a live project. And I personally feel that makes a lot of difference. It basically shows that you went above and beyond and did something that others have not tried. Right? So that is what I would say.
Thank you, Amlan, for adding your bits to this question. I'll move on to Sudarshan now. So Sudarshan, like 2 cents from your side.
I think Amlan got the technical part of it about finance, so I'll focus on the other emotional aspect of an MBA. It's very fast, it's quite chaotic. For some people, it's not the kindest of experiences. Some people do it in a fun way, things work for them, they don't take it to heart. A lot of people learn to handle failures in an MBA. You will see failures almost every month. It being a competition, not getting a short list, not getting less marks. Although we've all been through 3 or 4 years of graduation, the pace at which rejection success comes in an MBA is pretty fast. People lose relationships, people struggle to manage time. You will get something called a fever. This is something you will understand when you get into an MBA. You will start to chase a lot of things you didn't want to. You chase it because the others are chasing. So please take care of your mental health. That's the biggest learning you must get out of MBA. Be very receptive to criticism. Be very receptive to options. MBA is a door opener. Don't go with I want McKinsey, I want HUL. Don't go with that mentality. Make a lot of friends. Make that network expansive. It's a small world. Trust me, Tier 1 MBA is a very small world. Now, if I Google Mohanty or Arpit or Nancy on my LinkedIn or Facebook, I'll surely have 50 plus mutual friends. It's a very small world. Everybody is connected. People will help you find jobs. Don't worry about that one day of placement. It's as bad as worrying about CAT. You've gone through it once. You're already into the system. Take care of yourself. Be very, very receptive and don't fall into this FOMO and, oh, he's doing a course in finance. Should I do CFA? Should I take up that digital marketing course? Not required. Just find yourself. I discovered a lot of my own personality in those 2 years of really hard grinding amongst peers. Your peers are your best teachers. So don't forget to have fun. That's all I say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sudarshan. Thank you. Yeah, moving on to Arpit.
Yeah, I think like I would also try to cover my personal experience and the most valuable learnings that I have. So first thing is that please don't think about are you into the best option that you had. So every college has plus, every college is minus, and what I think the best is that the one you are into. So like don't worry about what has already been done. Don't worry about your 10, 12, your profile, your gaps. Every college has every opportunity for everyone. That is, I think, like don't blame your past things and make it a load for your future. Like every of the top 20B schools have opportunities for everyone in their batch, and the only thing required is just to find them and explore them and grab them at the first sight. The second thing I think would be like as Amlan told, that case study. So personally, during my NITIE journey, I think if I have to divide my best time, so a major chunk of that time and learning would be devoted to case studies. I did many case studies and won a few. And actually that was the best learning, because every case study offers you a problem in different domain, different company, and then you learn. So as a fresher, I could not, as an MBA student, you cannot learn everything at every course but the case studies are one point you find to learn everything. And to be honest, that actually helps you to connect with a lot of people, a lot of company employees. And if I show you my first slide that I made for a first case study, and if I show you the last slide that I made as a case study team, I love my progress. Like first slide is something that is expected from an engineer who has just graduated and come into B school, and he doesn't know. Like I did not even have a basic alignment set. But when I see my last slide, I think I made a great art of it. So that is one thing, be a very continual learner, like apply Kaizen to your MBA itself. And the third thing, the best of the learnings of MBA doesn't come from classrooms, it comes from people. So talk to as many people and don't hesitate to get help, because help is all the thing that you need. because you don't know what's the real picture, and people are there, specifically seniors, they will guide you for sure. So I think that, and yeah, most important, please have fun. That is the best 2 years for your life, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Arpit. Thank you. Yeah, lastly, we'll move to Nancy.
So I think, most of the things have been covered, but from my experience, again, certain things that I would like to reiterate. One is, from a CV standpoint, how do you, stand out of, your batchmates? It could be through having, competitions, through live projects, or through any other competitions happening inter college, or being part of certain clubs, or leading certain clubs, or in any of the ways how your profile is different and standing out as compared to your peers. That helps, right? Second, of course, it is very, very important, when you move towards this business side of it, right? Unlike your engineering or any other graduation you have done, it's important to have good relationships amongst your peers, your seniors, with your faculty and everybody. So do not hesitate in reaching out to people who you might not know, right? So it's important to have that connect and learn from each other. Everybody, it's a very diverse classroom, batch that comes these days in MBA. Learn from everybody's background, what they have gone through, and it really adds value to yourself. And MBA is something about building your personality, exploring yourself, discovering yourself, and be free to explore yourself during this time. Do not worry much around other things. Things would happen automatically for you, right? Don't worry much around it. Be free and explore yourself, I would say.
Thank you so much. And yeah, that's about the parting words. Everything falls in place if you put in the hard yards. So don't think about what you have done in your past and how it will affect your future. Just put in the work that's required in these 2 years, and everything ultimately will pan out the way you want it to. Maybe not sooner, but later, definitely. On that note, let's wrap this session up. Thank you so much, the panelists, for joining in and sharing your valuable insights with these students on what they can expect in their summers or autumns, whatever. With respect to different companies as well, we were focused on what processes different companies have, and again, the kind of questions you guys were asked. How did you prepare for those questions? So thank you so much for sharing this, and I think it could have helped a lot of people, not just people specifically joining your institutes from where you have graduated, but other institutes as well, because this was not a focus session on NITIE or Excel, or for that matter MDI or SP, but it was a session for ops and HR people who want to make a career in that. So I think in that regards, people would have definitely benefited out of it. And plus, for those who will definitely watch the session later, I think there are a lot of things that they can get from this. You just have to stick with these 2 hours of learning. You have to watch these 2 hours, only then you can extract learning. Otherwise, if you fast forward, then probably the learning would be restricted. But on that note, thank you so much for your time, and thank you the audience who was there watching the session. Hope you would have extracted a lot out of it, and hopefully your MBA journey that's going to start in, say, the next couple of months would be a successful stint for you and something that you'll remember for the rest of your life. On that note, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.